Every time we produce, anytime we work, anytime we do anything, we are paying 70% of the taxes that we are contributing towards this monster. And yet people are thinking the problem is Ruto flying all over the place, or Ruto stealing here, these peanuts he's stealing. This is the biggest theft to our lives, our livelihoods, our future. It is our enslavement. And unless we say we are going to cut it off, there's nothing else we are doing here. We are wasting time. You can remove Ruto, put who you want. If they do not cut off this thing, it is not about just jailing people. If we do not cut off this slavery, this particular slavery, we are doomed as a nation. And what has happened is that William Ruto, because he was a participant in it, he has enjoyed the spoils of it. He cannot revisit it. He is living the legacy of their regime. That is what has happened. He can't turn it around. He has now got it on his plate. He can't turn it. He knows he has no solution. He knows he's going to fail. And the only thing he can thereafter do is postpone his exit. He's trying and dying to just remain there until the next election. He doesn't even care if he will remove him. He will leave the problem to somebody else and we'll be crying the same way as we're crying today. He can only resort to tyranny because he cannot solve our problem. Just a few days ago, the new Minister of Finance comes out and says, we are never going to get relief on our lives because we have debt payments and the only time we'll get relief is in 2034. And he tried to list bullet payments of Eurobonds that are due because these Eurobonds ended up becoming $7 billion worth of Eurobonds. And there is another 7 to 8 billion worth of syndicated loans. And there's humongous domestic debt called 5.4 trillion, which we don't know what it is. We are in a situation where if we do not deal with this, if we do not deal with this one particular issue, it is not about tribe, it is not about this, it is not about that. William Ruto will never be graced by God to solve this problem that he helped create. He cannot solve it because he is in it. He's in the muck. And anything that means that you address it, look at it, audit it, find fault in it. In fact, the audit I can give them tomorrow. Here it is. These are the numbers. This is what happened. And nobody, in 2 years we have spoken about this, nobody has contradicted our numbers. Let them come and tell us, show us where we are wrong. They can't. They don't even want to address it. And every time we come to economic issues, we are sidetracked. We are sidetracked to all sorts of things. I even believe that is why abductions happened in December, because all of a sudden we're coming back to the issues that raised the revolution in June. There were economic issues that raised the revolution in June. It was about raising taxation. When people are already in pain, you're adding more pain. And he was advertising it in his mouth. Oh, by the time I get to 2022, 27, will be 22% of of our GDP. I don't know what we're going to tax. He was advertising pain, right? Because in this solution, to solve this problem, you only have two choices. You either raise taxes because you need more revenue, and there are limitations of that, or you go to default, which other countries have done. We are today the highest debt ratio servicing country in the world. In other words, of our taxation, we are the one country that is paying the most of its revenue towards debt servicing. We, Kenya, are the highest. This is where Sri Lanka had reached, right? And it collapsed. This is where we are. This is the nation that we are living in. And we can remove William Ruto tomorrow. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, he's more or less a dead man walking. He's done, right? He cannot revive himself no matter what he tries to do. It's over. But the issue is going to be, then what? Then what? What do we do after that? Put whoever you want. You want to put the same people that were part of this mark? Go ahead. We'll be back here again on this show, lamenting, crying, fighting, because this will not stop. When you see the man create a university model, that is a new mode of funding. What he's trying to do, he has no money to support help. And IMF had told him, since you don't want to default, you need to raise taxes and you need to stop your subsidies. He has no money to give help. You create a new thing that is going to become a problem. That problem has ended up going to court and being stopped. Now people have to find school fees. When you hear SHIF and SHA, it's create a new system so that whatever monies that had been there in NHIF, because you have taken them towards payments of debt and other things, now you start a new thing and it's a blunder, it's a mess. Yes, it's because you have no money. Apart from the fact that they want to loot little peanuts there, they are literally because they have no money. You create new systems, you stall off payments. They are in such a crisis. Government is being run like a kiosk as we are talking today. Little sheets of paper to move monies just for issues of ministries. This is the dilemma we are in. And unless we solve this problem, which is a slavery that was created, that amounts, according to our records, to something like $50 billion worth of a heist, world standard beyond your imagination, we are going nowhere. We are not solving it. And we'll keep trying to talk, we'll keep trying to educate, because this is the issue. You can join his government, you can do whatever you want, you will fail. He has no money to deliver anything. He has none. And we are not going to give him. We have reached a saturation point in this country because this situation in economic terms has created two twin devils, inflation and recession. You try and solve one, it activates the other. You solve this, it activates the other. We have a quagmire here, and that is why the new minister can categorically say we have no relief. How can a minister say we have no relief? What are you saying? We are just supposed to swallow suffering until 2034? You have failed. If you cannot solve our problem, get out of the way. Get out of office. Exit so that we can breathe life into this generation and those that are ahead. We have a problem here that has been created, and unless we cut it off, unless we sever it, unless we say tomorrow we are going to cut off this monster, we are not going to pay it. We are in hell. This year, 1.9 trillion is going towards that debt. Last year, we raised 2.4 trillion in tax revenue, ordinary revenue. So 1.9 trillion is going to it. In the next financial year, beginning 2025 to 2026, 2.2 trillion is going to that monster. In the next one after that, 2026, 2027 election year, 2.4 trillion is going to that monster. We can keep going down these figures. And you got huge principal payments starting 2027. We are in a big problem, and he cannot solve it. The whole lot of them cannot solve it. Anybody who am of it will not solve it because they'll be bought by the same entities. It needs to be cut off, and you free up space for every single Kenyan to breathe. That breathing looks like this. Very simply, it means if we were not paying 1.9 trillion, because I can tell you, as far as our figures are concerned, we have paid off our debt. If there's any legitimate debt, whether it's to IMF, some of the Chinese debt is very legitimate. Some of our bilaterals are very legitimate. It is a very small percentage. And that small percentage will be more than compensated by the illegal debt that we have paid to these funny entities, because it is illegal debt. We have never seen it. It has never helped us, has never built anything here. It has not even paid a salary of a chief. This is how pathetic it is. And this is the criminality that has happened. So if we are not paying 1.9 trillion, it means, very simply, you have a funding for education. A child today in primary, they need roughly 4,000 shillings. You have 10 million students. 4,000 shillings, and you're not looking for any bursary. Nobody's queuing for any bursary. Nobody's queuing. No teacher is worrying about their salary. No teacher is worried about the increment. Nobody is buying even a pencil. Right? That's 40 billion. You have about 4 million in high school. that need about 20,000 shillings. Again, nobody will line up for a bursary. Teachers will be fully paid. Maybe boarding, maybe an extra figure. You're talking about another 80. That is 100 billion. And when you get to university, you have 250. They normally say take a third. I think we're looking at the average programs. You can say the average cost is about 300,000 a year. The parent at that point can pay 100,000 because they've paid nothing all this time. They will have had enough money to save. They can get help for 100,000 as a loan, and the government can contribute 100,000. That takes you to another 25 million. 130 billion shillings, roughly, would take care of all funding of schools. Another 300 would take care of all your shif and sha. You will not need to go to a hospital with any money. You'll not even contribute. You have programs here that can be done that are phenomenal. You can even give tax rebates. You can even say we don't need VAT anymore from Kenyans, and that becomes immediate relief. 360 billion that is collected. You have a country that you can then even offer, and I'm talking about just a year saving of not payment of this debt. We ourselves can offer our own aid packages for our fellow African countries and go and help them build their infrastructure. We have a lot of capacity here. We can extend our reach on soft loans to our neighbors on terms that are African, not terms that are oppressive. And not only are we spreading our reach, our markets, opening up new directions, right? And goodwill from our neighbors, it will be phenomenal growth for this country. I'm talking about 1 year. The following year, another 2 trillion. You can go on. We are not a poor nation. We have been made to believe that we are poor. We can't sustain ourselves. We need donor money. We need this. We need that. It is all rubbish. Rubbish. It is so that we think small. We think about the price of unga. We think about the unga in our stomach. It is fake. This is truly the land of milk and honey that the Mzungu came to exploit. He knew what he found here. And sure enough, he created a template under which he was a huge beneficiary and still is. And still is. But this is the economic liberation we are talking about. The liberation where you are saying, because we have averaged that about, even if you're employed, probably directly about 45% of your tax, of your income goes to tax, but indirectly a minimum of another 15. We've averaged a bit more, but let us say 60% of your income goes towards tax, goes to Zakayo. What does he give you in return other than the abuses and the lies that he speaks? In France, an equivalent country that had a similar history of economic liberation, and they called the emancipation the Fifth Republic under Charles de Gaulle, 60% was accepted as a rate under which one would pay tax. But what do you get back in return? You get back your free healthcare. You get the best surgery free. You have your pension. You have your unemployment insurance. You have your infrastructure. You have security. In fact, the big fight in France today is about retirement age because the pension is so good. People want to enjoy it when they believe they have still got some life in them, right? So this is what you get for 60%. Here, what do you get for 60% of your money going to tax? The man stands up and he lies. He pretends he's a president. The man stands up and he oppresses. The man stands up and uses the very instruments under which you're paying tax to go and abduct kids, to go and kill young men and women all over the place. This is who you're dealing with. Who gave him this mandate? Who do they believe they are? They're the biggest joke on earth. And I can tell you they shall face the wrath of God here and thereafter. They are the scum of the earth. They are not leaders. They are not leaders. It is very unfortunate that I even myself had anything to do with somebody called William Ruto, that I knew him 12 years ago, that I even helped save his life in ICC. I feel this onerous duty not only to correct that wrong, but to educate Kenyans, on what they must keep as their north. What is the true period under which they are going through? And let us not deceive ourselves. Economic liberation and the fight for it is going to be just as onerous, but I believe shorter, than our political liberation. It took 100 years to get our political liberation. We must shorten this for our economic one. We must break this chain of our economic freedom. I think, Hillary, you can take it from there.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa.